Now for part two of this video, this is a chart from the Calculated Risk blog over here. This is total net worth of American people as a percentage of GDP. We don't have worldwide charts, so this is a US-centric chart, of course. But this is as a percent of GDP, so whether inflation is high or low is canceled out in both the numerator and the denominator. I hope everyone understands this. Now, I contend that economic growth is a function of rising asset prices, which I explained throughout this channel. And as we are entering a high-tech age, an atom age of exponential technological deflation, prosperity rises. So even though GDP is rising, net worth as a percentage of GDP is also rising, which is normal. Now, yes, there had to be an unusual amount of quantitative easing because of COVID, but even before COVID, this was rising very, very well. And this is what you want. Net worth rose from low 400s to low mid 500s in a decade, even though GDP also rose easily 50-60% over that time. So people became a lot more prosperous because net worth collectively rose. Now, yes, wealth is too concentrated at the top. That is true. That's a different topic. That doesn't mean you should generate less wealth. That means there should be policies that encourage greater circulation of wealth. And I'll talk about that in different videos, but I don't want to go on too many different tangents over here. This situation is good, and it also reveals that the temporarily high inflation we have has also created a huge spike of net worth. And that is part of the reason there is some inflation. But as quantitative easing gets tightened a little bit, which they should not do, they should keep it flat until this just converges to the trend line. The temporary inflation we're seeing right now, which is not high, I continue to maintain that, and I've backed that up with data, contrary to the narrative in the media, will go away by the time this line gets back down to the mid 500s. But the mid 500s is the equilibrium point. You should not necessarily see this as having to go lower because this general uptrend should be occurring. That is how we have created a more prosperous society. For all the narrative of the middle class going away and things like that, aggregate net worth as a percentage of GDP is rising. Yes, more of that goes to the top, but the average person is still rising in absolute wealth. Also keep in mind that households are smaller than they used to be as well. And since we spoke about housing and home equity in part one of this video, I'll go to another chart pertaining to that. This chart is also from Calculated Risk blog, and you can see here the housing crisis where home prices rose a lot, but mortgage debt as a percentage of GDP rose a great deal more. It rose from 45% to almost 75%, and that created the housing bust, which would have caused a deflationary spiral such as the Great Depression and possibly of similar duration if the Federal Reserve had not done QE. Now the Federal Reserve, from the money printing they're doing, which has to offset technological deflation and so forth, has in fact created a very good situation. Now, I'm not happy that they're buying mortgage-backed securities because that's distorting the housing market at the expense of other markets, and this is not helping people who are not homeowners. But for anyone who has a home on mortgage, this has actually been a golden age. Home prices are rising while mortgage debt is falling, so the gap between these two lines is a measure of home equity, household real estate value as a percentage of GDP. Now, we saw in the net worth chart earlier how net worth was rising, and the above trend amount of quantitative easing because of the COVID-19 crisis caused home prices to rise a lot. That's why a lot of people just don't understand what's going on. They're complaining about having to pay $500 a year more in gasoline, but they're not complaining about how they have $200,000 more of home equity. They can only reverse one if they reverse the other. People are not looking at this holistically because they don't understand how to connect the dots. Now, yes, someone who didn't have a house got left behind, and that's a problem with this policy because the Federal Reserve is still buying mortgage-backed securities because it still thinks it should be unwinding quantitative easing. When I say no, they have to give cash directly to people. That will still make house prices go up, but the purchasing power of renters will also go up. But I repeat again, people don't realize that the quantitative easing has created all this home equity, and you have the same people complaining how gasoline is now too expensive and it's costing me $1,200 a year more than before. But at the same time, if their home equity rose by an extra $300,000, they'll attribute that to their own intelligence. Oh, look, my home went up. I bought it before it rose so much. I'm so smart. This is entirely because of my brilliance. That is what they'll say, not realizing that exactly the same force that may have caused the price of milk at the grocery store to go up is also the same thing that has increased their net worth tremendously because of an increase in home equity. Now, gasoline is not the best example because the rise in oil and natural gas prices is in fact due to reasons outside of QE. It's because of deliberate stoppage of U.S. domestic oil and natural gas production for ideological reasons by the government, but that will also get mitigated rather soon. The tightening that is occurring by the Federal Reserve is going to reverse this somewhat, but still only down to about here. So this is somewhat of a permanent gain in wealth. Now, it's a problem that this is concentrated in real estate, and it is attracting technological disruption for those of you who understand the atom thesis. That is why working from home, telework over Zoom, is becoming a very widespread practice, because people are going to migrate away to lower and lower housing costs, and this pile of money is attracting technological disruption. However, that is a different topic for a different time. You may want to look at this video up here where I talk about how a lot of one-time trends boosting housing prices are saturated. That doesn't mean the Federal Reserve has to stop printing or even can stop money printing. It's just that market forces are going to force them to give cash directly to people. So a lot of different topics in this video, and I hope it wasn't very confusing. This was an advanced video, and it presumes that the viewer is familiar with some of the basic concepts that I speak about on this channel. However, quantitative easing, despite the very imperfect and blunt instrument way that it's being done, is increasing the net worth of U.S. citizens substantially, and it's increasing it at a rate greater than inflation outside of the bottom tier of people. Now, they should help the bottom tier of people as well. That's why I say the Federal Reserve should print money in a manner that gives cash directly to people. But that is in my Atom publication that I encourage all of you to read. So a lot of different topics. I hope this made sense. Any comments in the comments section are always welcome. If you like this type of content and these sorts of high concept finance topics, then I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you very much for watching.